My name is Sloane Hartley, and I'm 23 years old. I'm standing outside the graduation hall right now, watching families swarm around their graduates with flowers, balloons, and tears of joy. My phone sits heavy in my hand. 0 messages. 0 calls. I've checked it 17 times in the last hour. 3 years ago, when my brother Mitchell graduated, my entire family flew across 2 states, rented a hotel suite, and threw a party that cost more than my yearly tuition. Today, I walked across that stage alone. I sat in my assigned seat alone. I'm leaving alone. The cap and gown suddenly feel like a costume I'm wearing for an audience that never showed up. I can feel the diploma in my bag, this piece of paper I worked myself to exhaustion for, and nobody cares. Not my parents, not my siblings, nobody. I take one last look at the celebration I'm not part of, pull off my cap, and walk toward the parking lot. Behind my sunglasses, silent tears streak down my face. This is the last time, the absolute last time I let them make me feel worthless. Before we dive into what happened next, can you let me know where you're watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments because I love knowing where my viewers are. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because this story takes a turn nobody saw coming, and you won't want to miss what happens when the family that ignored me discovered what I'd been hiding. Trust me, the look on their faces was priceless. Now, let me take you back to how this all started. Growing up in the Hartley household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy. At the top sat my older brother Mitchell, 28 now, the golden child who could do no wrong. Ivy League educated, working at our father Howard's investment firm, engaged to a socialite whose family owned half of Connecticut. Everything Mitchell touched turned to gold in our parents' eyes. Then came Blair, 19, the baby princess who'd been spoiled since the day she was born. Studying fashion design at an expensive private college, driving a Mercedes our parents bought her for her 18th birthday, living in a luxury apartment they paid for without question. And then there was me, the middle child, the invisible one, the afterthought. Let me paint you a picture of what invisible looks like. When I was in elementary school, I won the regional spelling bee championship. I studied for months, memorized thousands of words, beat kids from 15 different schools. The day of my victory, my parents didn't show up. They were at Mitchell's baseball game, watching him sit on the bench for 9 innings. When I came home with my trophy, my mother Patrice glanced up from her magazine and said, "That's nice, dear," then went back to reading. The trophy sat on my dresser for 3 days before I realized nobody was going to ask about it, so I shoved it in my closet. Mitchell's participation trophies lined the mantel downstairs. In high school, I made honor roll every single semester for 4 years. My name was printed in the local paper 6 times. Not once did my parents attend an awards ceremony. But when Blair got a B+ on a history test after failing the previous 3, they took her to her favorite restaurant and bought her a designer purse to celebrate her improvement. The message was crystal clear. My achievements were expected and therefore invisible. Their achievements, no matter how small, were monumental. College was where the disparity became impossible to ignore. I dreamed of attending NYU, had the grades and test scores to get in, received acceptance letters that made my hands shake with excitement. When I showed my parents, my father Howard barely looked up from his laptop. "Too expensive," he said flatly. "State school is fine for you." I tried to argue, explained the networking opportunities, the program quality, the scholarship it'd been offered that would cover half the tuition. My mother cut me off. "Your father said no, Sloane. Stop being difficult. Besides, state school is perfectly adequate." 6 months later, they spent double what NYU would have cost on a car for Blair, a brand new Mercedes convertible that she crashed twice in the first year. They paid for repairs both times without complaint. So I went to State University and I worked 3 jobs. I waited tables at a diner on weeknights, worked retail on weekends, and did data entry from my cramped dorm room whenever I could squeeze in hours. I watched my classmates go to parties, join clubs, have the college experience while I calculated how many shifts I needed to cover textbooks. My parents paid for Mitchell's apartment, his car, his spring break trips. They covered Blair's rent, her shopping addiction, her sorority dues. They gave me nothing and expected gratitude that they occasionally let me come home for holidays. Holidays where I cooked the entire meal while Blair lounged on the couch and Mitchell held court telling stories about his important job. Holidays where I cleaned up alone while everyone else retired to the living room. Holidays where I was family labor, not family. 2 months before graduation, I started reminding them about the date. May 14th, I said during a Sunday phone call. I'll send you all the details. It's at 2 in the afternoon. My mother's response was non-committal. Well, see, she said, which in Hartley family language meant probably not. I sent a formal invitation. I texted the date multiple times. I called again 3 weeks out, then 2 weeks, then 1 week. Every time, the answer was the same vague, well, see, or, that's a busy time for us. Then, 7 days before my graduation, my mother actually called me. For a brief, foolish moment, I thought she was calling to confirm they were coming. Instead, she said, "We're taking Blair to Europe that week. She's been so stressed with finals, and we thought a graduation trip would be nice for her." My stomach dropped. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay calm. "This is my college graduation. I've worked so hard for this. 4 years of juggling 3 jobs and full-time classes. Can't you reschedule the trip by 1 week?" There was a pause, and then my mother sighed like I was being unreasonable. "You're being dramatic, Sloan. It's just a ceremony. You walk across a stage for 30 seconds and sit in an uncomfortable chair for 3 hours. We've already been to Mitchell's graduation. We know what it's like." The dismissiveness in her tone felt like a slap. "This isn't about what you've experienced," I said, feeling tears burning behind my eyes. "This is about showing up for me. Once. Just once." My mother's voice went cold. "We've made our decision. You're 23 years old. You need to stop being so needy." She hung up before I could respond. My father Howard never even got on the phone. Mitchell sent a text 2 days before graduation. "Sorry sis, can't make it. Big client meeting. You understand." No, I didn't understand. I didn't understand how a client meeting scheduled months in advance was more important than his sister's college graduation. Blair didn't even bother with an excuse. She just posted Instagram stories from Paris on the day of my ceremony, champagne glasses and Eiffel Tower selfies with the caption, "Living my best life." So I sat in that auditorium alone. I watched thousands of other graduates get swarmed by parents, grandparents, siblings, friends. I heard names called and eruptions of cheers. When they called Sloan Marie Hartley, I walked across that stage to polite applause from strangers. I accepted my diploma, smiled for the photographer, and returned to my seat with my chest feeling hollow. After the ceremony, I stood outside, watching reunions happen all around me, families taking pictures, making dinner plans, crying happy tears. I got in my car and drove back to my tiny apartment with the broken heating and the neighbors who fought at 2 in the morning. I sat on my second-hand couch and looked at the family photos I still kept on my bookshelf. In every single one, I was in the background or partially cropped out. In most of them, I wasn't even looking at the camera because nobody had told me the photo was being taken. That night, something inside me broke, or maybe it finally healed. I realized I'd spent 23 years begging for crumbs of love from people who were never going to feed me. I'd twisted myself into shapes trying to earn approval from parents who had decided long ago that I wasn't worth their attention. I'd celebrated my siblings' successes while they couldn't even remember my birthday without a Facebook reminder. I was done. Completely done. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to perform for an audience that booed me off stage. I was going to figure out how to build a life where I mattered, even if that life didn't include the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I just didn't know yet that the universe was about to hand me the tools to do exactly that. 3 days after my graduation, I received a call from an attorney named Maxwell Burke. His voice was professional but warm when he introduced himself, and he asked if I could come to his office in downtown Chicago for a meeting regarding my grandmother's estate. My grandmother Iris had died 6 months earlier, and I'd been devastated. She was the only member of my family who'd ever made me feel seen. While my parents ignored my calls, Iris called me every single Sunday without fail. While my siblings forgot my existence, Iris sent care packages to my dorm filled with homemade cookies, handwritten notes, and gift cards for groceries. She asked about my classes, my dreams, my struggles. She listened when I talked. She remembered details about my life that my own parents couldn't be bothered to retain. Iris had been estranged from my mother for reasons nobody would explain to me, and my mother had forbidden us from having a relationship, but Iris and I had maintained contact secretly throughout my college years. Those Sunday phone calls were sometimes the only thing that kept me going. I took the train into the city and found Maxwell's office in a sleek high-rise building that screamed expensive legal services. The waiting room had original artwork on the walls and leather furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary would be at whatever entry-level job I was about to start applying for. Maxwell greeted me personally, shook my hand, and led me into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. He offered me coffee, which I accepted because I was too nervous to know what else to do with my hands. Then he opened a folder and smiled at me in a way that made my heart race. "Miss Hartley," he said, "your grandmother Iris was very specific in her wishes regarding her estate. She left detailed instructions that I've been following precisely." He slid a document across the polished table toward me. "Your grandmother's estate has been valued at just over $5 million in total assets. This includes a penthouse apartment in the Gold Coast neighborhood, an investment portfolio, and liquid cash assets. She's left everything to you." The words didn't make sense at first. I stared at the numbers on the page, at the property description, at my name listed as the sole beneficiary. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. "There must be a mistake. What about my mother? Or my siblings?" Maxwell's expression was kind but firm. "There's no mistake. Your grandmother was extremely clear. Everything goes to you, Sloane. However, there is one condition." He pulled out another document, and this one had Iris' handwriting at the bottom, her signature that I'd recognize anywhere. "You cannot tell your family about this inheritance for 6 months from the date of this meeting. Your grandmother wanted you to have time to establish yourself independently before they learned about your financial situation. She believed, and I'm quoting her here, that they will come running when they smell money, and Sloane needs to see their true colors first." My hands were shaking as I held the paper. 6 months of silence. 6 months of letting my family believe I was struggling while I actually had more money than I'd ever imagined. It felt dishonest. It felt manipulative. It felt exactly like something Iris would do to prove a point. "There's one more thing," Maxwell said, and he pulled out a laptop, turned it toward me, and pressed play on a video file. Iris' face filled the screen, and I felt tears spring to my eyes immediately. She was sitting in what looked like this very office, wearing her favorite blue cardigan, her silver hair pulled back in the neat bun she always wore. She looked directly at the camera, directly at me, and smiled. "Hello, my darling Sloane," her recorded voice said, and I could barely breathe. "If you're watching this, then I've passed on, and Maxwell has just told you about your inheritance. I imagine you're confused, possibly feeling guilty. Maybe wondering why I didn't leave anything to your mother. Let me explain." Iris' expression grew serious. "I watched your mother Patrice grow up as the unwanted middle child in my family. Her older sister was the beauty, her younger brother was the baby, and Patrice was overlooked and undervalued. It damaged her deeply. I thought when she had her own children, she would remember that pain and do better. Instead, she repeated the exact same pattern with you. I watched her ignore your achievements, dismiss your needs, and treat you like you were lucky to be tolerated. It broke my heart because I knew exactly how that felt. And I couldn't protect you the way I should have." Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't bother wiping them away. "I'm giving you this money because I see you, Sloane. I see your strength, your intelligence, your resilience, your kind heart despite everything you've been through. I see the woman you're becoming, and I want to give you the freedom to become her without the weight of financial struggle that I know your parents have forced upon you." Iris leaned closer to the camera, and her voice dropped to something more urgent. But here's what I need you to understand, sweetheart. Your mother will come running when she knows about this money. Your father will suddenly be interested in your life. Your siblings will remember you exist. They will apologize and make promises and tell you they love you. Some of it might even feel real. So I'm asking you to wait 6 months before you tell them. Live your life, build your career. Make friends who value you for yourself, not for what you can give them. And watch your family during those 6 months. See if they reach out, see if they celebrate you, see if they love you when they think you have nothing to offer them. Make them prove their love first. Because I promise you, the moment they know about this money, you'll never know the truth again. The video Iris looked directly into my eyes through the screen. You deserve people who show up, Sloan. You deserve to be somebody's first choice, not their last resort. This money is your freedom to find those people and build that life. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for accepting what I'm freely giving you. And remember, sweetheart, I loved you exactly as you are. I always did. I always will. The video ended, and I sat in that conference room sobbing like a child while Maxwell discreetly left the room to give me privacy. When I finally collected myself, he returned with tissues and a bottle of water. Your grandmother was one of the most clear-minded, purposeful people I ever worked with, Maxwell said quietly. She knew exactly what she was doing. The question is, can you trust her judgment enough to follow through? I looked at the documents spread across the table, at the property deed with my name on it, at the investment statements showing numbers that made me dizzy. Could I really keep this secret? Could I watch my family continue to dismiss me while I sat on a fortune? Could I handle 6 months of pretending to be broke while living in a penthouse? The guilt felt overwhelming, but then I thought about my graduation. About sitting alone in that auditorium. About my mother's voice saying you're being dramatic when I asked them to show up for the most important day of my educational life. About Mitchell's text brushing me off for a client meeting. About Blair's Paris selfies posted during my ceremony. And I thought about Iris' words. Make them prove their love first. Yes, I heard myself say. I can do this. I'll follow her instructions exactly. Maxwell smiled and started walking me through the paperwork. Within 2 hours, I owned a penthouse apartment in one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods, had access to investment accounts that would generate more passive income than most people's salaries, and held the keys to a life I'd never imagined possible. I walked out of that office building into the Chicago sunshine feeling like I was living in someone else's story. The guilt was still there, whispering that I should tell my family, that keeping secrets was wrong. But louder than the guilt was Iris' voice in my head. Make them prove their love first. So that's exactly what I was going to do. The first time I walked into the penthouse, I genuinely thought Maxwell had taken me to the wrong address. The building itself was stunning, all glass and steel, and doormen in actual uniforms who greeted me by name because Maxwell had called ahead. The elevator required a key card just to access the penthouse floors. When the doors opened directly into the apartment, I stepped into 3,000 square feet of luxury that made my brain short-circuit. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 2 full walls, offering views of Lake Michigan that looked like something from a movie. The kitchen had marble countertops and appliances I didn't know the names of. There were 3 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom that was bigger than my entire previous apartment. The master closet alone could have fit my old bedroom inside it. Everything was decorated in soft neutrals with touches of gold, elegant and expensive and completely unlike anywhere I'd ever lived. I walked through room after room feeling like an imposter. This couldn't be my life. People like me didn't live in places like this. I was the girl who'd eaten ramen for dinner 4 nights a week to save money. I was the girl whose winter coat had duct tape holding the lining together. I was the girl who'd walked 45 minutes to class to save bus fare. Now, I was standing in a penthouse that cost more than most people would earn in their entire lives, and it belonged to me. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. I sat down on the designer couch in the living room and just stared at the lake view, trying to process that this was real. Maxwell helped me understand my financial situation over the next few weeks. The investment portfolio was diverse and stable, generating enough passive income that I could live comfortably without working if I chose to. But Iris had included a note specifically about that. Don't become someone who lives off inherited wealth without purpose, Shed written. Build your own career, earn your own success. Keep this money separate so you always know what you've achieved on your own merit. So that's what I did. I applied for jobs in marketing and business, using my degree and my interview skills and nothing else. I landed a position at a prestigious marketing agency 3 weeks later, making $65,000 annually. It was good money, enough to live on respectably, but modest compared to what was sitting in my investment accounts. I kept the two completely separate. I paid my bills from my salary. The inheritance stayed untouched, a safety net I didn't mention to anyone. My coworkers became my first real friend group, and I realized I'd never actually had that before. Deanna was a senior account manager with a wicked sense of humor and zero tolerance for nonsense. Vaughn worked in creative and made me laugh until I cried during lunch breaks. Blythe was in analytics and had this calm, grounded energy that made me feel safe. They invited me to happy hours and asked about my weekends and remembered details about my life. When I mentioned I'd just graduated, they asked to see photos and actually looked at them. When I said my family hadn't come to the ceremony, they were outraged on my behalf. "Are you serious?" Deanna had said, her face a picture of disbelief. "Who skips their kid's college graduation?" It was the first time anyone had validated that my family's behavior was actually wrong, not just me being dramatic like my mother always said. I kept my contact with my family minimal during those first few months. They didn't reach out much anyway. My mother sent the occasional text asking, "Did you find a job yet?" with a tone that assumed I was failing. I responded with simple yes or no answers, never elaborating. Mitchell never reached out at all. Blair asked me for money twice in the first month, $500 the first time for an emergency that turned out to be concert tickets, $300 the second time for textbooks that I knew she'd spend on clothes. I said no both times. Her response was to stop texting me entirely, which honestly felt like a relief. My father Howard maintained his typical silence, had never been particularly involved in my life, and he wasn't about to start now. None of them asked where I was living or how I was doing or whether I needed anything. They assumed I was struggling because I'd always struggled, and they were content to leave me to it. I didn't correct their assumptions. I didn't post about my penthouse on social media. I didn't mention my situation to anyone except Maxwell, who I met with monthly to review my finances. Iris' instructions had been clear: 6 months of silence, 6 months to see who they were when they thought I had nothing to offer. So I watched and waited. I made my penthouse into a real home, slowly adding pieces that felt like me: plants on the windowsills, books lining the built-in shelves, artwork from local galleries, a reading nook by the window where I'd sit on Sunday mornings with coffee and watch the sunrise over the lake. It was the first place I'd ever lived that felt like mine, not just a temporary stop on the way to somewhere else. I started therapy, something I'd needed for years but could never afford. Dr. Chen specialized in family dynamics and childhood emotional neglect. In our first session, when I explained my family situation, she nodded with the weariness of someone who'd heard similar stories 1,000 times. "You're describing a classic case of scapegoat child dynamics," she said. "In families with multiple children, sometimes one child is designated as the problem or the disappointment, regardless of their actual behavior or achievements. It's a psychological coping mechanism for dysfunctional family systems, and it's incredibly damaging." Hearing that I wasn't crazy, that there was actually a name for what I'd experienced, felt like someone had lifted a weight off my chest. We worked on processing years of neglect, on building self-worth that wasn't tied to my family's approval, on understanding that their treatment of me said everything about them and nothing about my actual value as a person. 3 months into my new life, something significant happened at work. I'd been assigned to a major campaign for a national retail client, and the strategy I developed exceeded every expectation. Sales increased 47% in the first month. The client was ecstatic. My boss Gwen called me into her office and offered me a promotion to senior account manager with a raise to $85,000 annually. When she told me the news, I actually cried in her office, and she hugged me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You earned this, Sloan," she said firmly. Your work is exceptional. Don't you dare doubt that. After work, Deanna, Vaughn, Blythe, and I went out to celebrate. They toasted to my success and meant it genuinely. Nobody was jealous or dismissive. Nobody tried to minimize my achievement. They were just happy for me because that's what real friends do. Sitting in that restaurant surrounded by people who actually showed up for me, I realized something profound. I was happy. Without my family's approval, without their presence, without their validation, I was genuinely happy. And that realization was more valuable than the entire inheritance Iris had left me. 4 months into my carefully constructed new life, everything changed. My phone buzzed with a notification that had been added to a family group chat. This was unusual because my family typically only included me in group communications when they needed something or wanted to make an announcement that required an audience. I opened the message thread and saw Mitchell had created the chat. His message was waiting. Family emergency. We need to talk as soon as possible. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, some small part of me still worried about them. I typed back asking what was wrong, if everyone was okay. The response came quickly. I lost my job. And it's worse than that. I owe money. A lot of money. I need help. The full story came out in fragments over the next few messages. Mitchell had recommended an investment to a major client, some tech startup that had been convinced was the next big thing. Had been so confident that had put his own money in as well, encouraging the client to go heavy. The startup collapsed spectacularly, fraud was involved, and the client lost $2 million. The investment firm fired Mitchell immediately to distance themselves from the disaster, but it got worse. Because Mitchell had been so aggressive in pushing the investment, the firm was holding him personally liable for a portion of the client's losses. He owed $150,000, and if he didn't pay, they were threatening legal action. On top of that, his fiancée Cordelia had broken off their engagement the moment she found out he was fired. Shed kept the $25,000 engagement ring Head bought her, claiming it was a gift and therefore hers to keep. Mitchell was financially ruined and alone. The family group chat exploded with responses. My father Howard was furious in a way I'd rarely seen. This is what happens when you don't think things through. You've embarrassed this entire family. I'm not bailing you out. You need to learn some responsibility for once in your life. My mother Patrice was panicking, sending message after message about how Mitchell couldn't possibly survive this, how he needed help, how the family had to do something. Blair said nothing at first, probably because she had no money to contribute and knew she'd be expected to. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, watching this drama unfold and feeling absolutely nothing. 4 months ago, Eid walked across a graduation stage alone because these people couldn't be bothered to show up. Now Mitchell was in crisis, and suddenly family solidarity mattered. Then my mother's attention turned to me. A private text came through, and I knew before I opened it what it would say. Sloan, we need to have a family meeting, tomorrow at the house. This affects all of us. I didn't respond immediately, weighing my options. I could ignore it. I could make an excuse. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what they'd say. I wanted to know if anyone would acknowledge that I existed beyond being a potential source of help for Mitchell. So I responded with a simple, "What time?" and got an immediate reply. 6 o'clock. Don't be late. I arrived at my childhood home the next evening, and found everyone already assembled in the formal living room. Nobody stood to greet me. Nobody asked how I was or commented that they hadn't seen me in months. I walked in and sat in the only empty chair, which was positioned awkwardly away from the main seating area, and waited. My father spoke first, his tone all business. Mitchell has made a serious mistake that has financial consequences for him. As a family, we need to come together to help him through this. My mother jumped in immediately. We've decided that everyone will contribute $30,000. That's $120,000 from the 4 of us, and Mitchell can figure out the remaining 30 on his own. She said this like it was already decided, like my agreement was assumed. I kept my face carefully neutral. I don't have that kind of money, I said simply. My father's expression hardened. You have a job now, don't you? You can take out a loan. Banks give personal loans all the time. The audacity was stunning. They wanted me to go into debt to fix Mitchell's mistake. I'm not taking out a $30,000 loan, I said, keeping my voice calm despite the anger building in my chest. That's not reasonable to ask. My mother's eyes filled with tears, the manipulative kind shed deployed my entire childhood. Please, Sloan. Your brother is in trouble. Don't you care about family? That's when Blair spoke up, her voice dripping with entitlement. Why should I have to give anything? I'm still in school. Sloane's always been the selfish one anyway. She should pay more since she has a real job. I stared at my younger sister. This 20-year-old who'd never worked a day in her life, who'd never paid her own rent, who'd been handed everything on a silver platter, calling me selfish. Selfish. I repeated, tasting the word. I'm selfish. Mitchell leaned forward, his desperation showing. Look, I know we haven't been super close lately, but I've always been there for you. Remember when I helped pay for your graduation gift? I nearly laughed. His graduation gift had been a $20 Starbucks card with a note saying congrats on finishing. That was the bar for being there for me apparently. What exactly have you done for me? I asked. Genuine curiosity in my voice. Give me one example of a time when I needed help and you provided it. The silence was deafening. Mitchell's face went red. That's not the point. Family helps family when someone's in crisis. I felt something snap inside me. My car broke down sophomore year. I called you for help. You said you were too busy and hung up. I had to walk 3 miles to work in the snow. My mother waved her hand dismissively. You can't bring up old grievances now. I turned to her. I needed emergency dental work junior year, an infected tooth that was causing me severe pain. I asked for help covering the bill because I didn't have enough in my account. You said you couldn't afford it and then took Blair shopping the next day. I saw the Instagram posts. She got 3 designer bags and a pair of boots that cost more than my dental bill. My father stood up, his face thunderous. This is why you'll always be a disappointment. You have no family loyalty, no sense of obligation. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us? His words hit exactly the way they were designed to, but Id spent 3 months in therapy learning to recognize emotional manipulation. You did the legal minimum required of parents, I said quietly. And you're holding it over my head like I should be grateful you didn't abandon me entirely. My mother's fake tears turned into real anger. How dare you? After everything we've sacrificed. I stood up because I couldn't sit in that chair pretending anymore. I'm not giving Mitchell money. I can't. I'm barely making my own rent. It was a lie, but they had no way of knowing that. Mitchell's expression twisted into something ugly. After everything we've done for you, you're pathetic. The family group chat lit up before I even got back to my car. Message after message attacking my character, calling me selfish, heartless, cruel. My mother saying I'd regret this. My father saying I was dead to him until I came to my senses. Blair posting crying emojis and saying she couldn't believe her own sister would abandon the family. Mitchell sending long paragraphs about betrayal and disappointment. I turned off notifications and drove back to my penthouse in silence. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows watching the city lights. I felt guilty, despite everything, despite knowing they were manipulating me. I felt guilty. That's how deep the conditioning went. But underneath the guilt was something else. Anger. Pure, righteous anger that they'd expected me to financially destroy myself to fix a problem Mitchell created while none of them could even be bothered to show up to my graduation. The first attack had come exactly as Iris predicted, and Id survived it. But I had a feeling this was just the beginning. The attacks didn't stop with that disastrous family meeting. Within 48 hours, I discovered my mother had created an extended family group chat that included aunts, uncles, cousins, and even some family friends I barely knew. Shed crafted a narrative that painted me as the villain in Mitchell's tragedy. According to her version of events, Mitchell was facing financial ruin through no fault of his own. The whole family was rallying to help him, but I was selfishly refusing to contribute despite having a good job and being financially comfortable. She conveniently left out the part where they wanted me to take out a $30,000 loan, or the fact that they'd skipped my college graduation, or literally any context that might make me look sympathetic. My phone exploded with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Aunt Loretta, my mother's sister, sent a long text about how disappointed she was in me. I always knew there was something cold about you, Sloane. Even as a child, you were distant. Now I see it's because you have no capacity for love or loyalty. Your brother needs you, and you're turning your back on family. Shameful. Cousin Simone, who had been close with as kids, posted in the group chat about how family was supposed to stick together through thick and thin. I can't imagine refusing to help my siblings. That's not how we were raised. Family comes first, always. The messages kept coming, dozens of them, each one a small cut. Uncle Raymond, Aunt Beatrice, Cousin Clifton. People who'd never once asked how I was doing, who hadn't sent a card for my graduation, who didn't know anything about my life, all suddenly had strong opinions about my moral failings. What struck me most was that not a single person asked for my side of the story. Not one relative reached out privately to say, "Hey, what's going on? This doesn't sound like you." They just accepted my mother's narrative wholesale and joined the pile-on. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that I'd been working 3 jobs through college while my parents funded my siblings' luxury lifestyles, that they'd abandoned me at my graduation, that this was about so much more than just one loan. But I remembered Iris' words. Let them show you who they are. So I said nothing. I muted the group chat and watched the messages pile up, a scrolling testament to how quickly family will turn on you when someone spins the right story. The second attack came through social media, and it was Blair who launched it. She posted a carefully crafted message on Instagram and Facebook, vague enough to maintain plausible deniability but clear enough that anyone who knew our family would understand. It's heartbreaking when the people you thought you could count on show their true colors. Family is supposed to be there for each other, but some people only care about themselves. Praying for strength during this difficult time. The post got hundreds of likes and dozens of comments asking what was wrong, offering support, condemning whoever had hurt her. Blair was eating up the sympathy, playing the victim beautifully. Within hours, the post had made its way through our social circles. People I went to high school with, casual acquaintances, even some people from my university started commenting and sharing. Some of them knew it was about me because Blair's friends weren't subtle in their additional posts. Some people are just selfish and there's nothing you can do about it. Family betrayal is the worst kind. Standing with you, Blair. You deserve better. I watched my phone light up with notifications as people who barely knew me formed opinions about my character based on deliberately misleading information. A few people who I'd thought were friends sent me questioning messages. Hey, I saw Blair's post. Is everything okay with your family? I didn't know how to respond. How do you explain years of systemic neglect in a text message? How do you make people understand without sounding like you're making excuses? The situation escalated when my mother crossed a line I never thought she'd cross. She called my workplace. I found out when my supervisor Gwen pulled me into her office with a concerned expression. Sloane, I need to ask you about something strange that happened. A woman called claiming to be your mother. She said you'd borrowed money from your family and were refusing to pay it back. She wanted to know if we could garnish your wages. My stomach dropped. That's completely untrue, I said, my voice shaking with anger and humiliation. I've never borrowed money from them. This is part of a family conflict that has nothing to do with my work. Gwen's expression shifted from concern to something harder. I believe you. The call felt off from the start. She was very aggressive and kept insisting we had a legal obligation to intervene. I told her that wasn't how anything works and ended the call. But I wanted you to know it happened. I could barely breathe. My own mother had tried to sabotage my job. She'd called my workplace and lied to my supervisor in an attempt to either get money from me or damage my professional reputation. I'm so sorry this happened, I said, feeling tears of rage burning behind my eyes. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Gwen's voice was kind but firm. Sloane, I've been doing this for 20 years. I can recognize family dysfunction when I see it. You're an excellent employee and this doesn't change anything about how we view you professionally. But you might want to consider getting ahead of this before it escalates further. I thanked her and left her office, my hands trembling. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and finally let the tears come. They weren't trying to guilt me anymore. They were actively trying to destroy me. The third attack came from the person I least expected. Mitchell showed up at my workplace 3 days after the phone incident. Security called up to my floor to let me know. Someone claiming to be my brother was in the lobby demanding to see me. I could have refused, could have had security escort him out, but some self-destructive part of me wanted to face him. I took the elevator down and found Mitchell pacing in the marble lobby, looking haggard and desperate. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his suit wrinkled, his jaw covered in stubble. When he saw me, his expression transformed from desperation to fury. "I know about the apartment," he said loudly enough that people in the lobby turned to look. "I know Iris left you money." My blood went cold. How did he know? Mitchell saw my expression and smiled cruelly. "Did you really think you could keep that secret? I hired a private investigator. He followed you. He photographed you going into a building that has penthouses starting at $3 million. I checked property records. There's a Sloane Marie Hartley who owns a unit in that building. So why don't you cut the crap about barely making rent?" People were definitely watching now. A security guard was moving toward us. I kept my voice low and steady. "You hired someone to follow me? Do you understand how completely unhinged that is?" Mitchell stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You've been lying to us. You let us think you were struggling while you're sitting on millions. Mitchell's inheritance should have been split among all of us, and you know it. You manipulated a dying old woman, and now you're hoarding money that belongs to the family." Every word was like a slap. "Iris was of completely sound mind when she made her will," I said, my voice shaking. "She chose to leave her estate to me. That was her decision, not mine. And even if I did have money, which I'm not confirming, I wouldn't owe you a single penny of it, not after what you've all put me through." Mitchell's mask slipped completely. "What we've put you through. You're such a victim, aren't you? Poor Sloane, nobody pays attention to her. Grow up, the world doesn't revolve around you." The security guard reached us. "Sir, you need to leave now or I'll call the police." Mitchell ignored him, his eyes locked on mine. "If you don't help me, I'll make sure everyone knows what a liar you are. I'll tell every single person in our family, every friend, everyone we know that you inherited millions and refused to help your own brother. I'll destroy your reputation. You'll have no one." I looked at the man I'd called my brother for 23 years and saw a stranger. "Get away from me," I said quietly. "And if you ever show up at my workplace again, I will call the police and I will press charges for harassment. We're done." I turned and walked back to the elevators, my spine straight, refusing to let him see how badly I was shaking. That evening, sitting in my penthouse with a glass of wine I couldn't drink because my stomach was churning, I called Maxwell. I told him everything. The family meeting. The extended family campaign. My mother's call to my workplace, Mitchell hiring a PI and confronting me at work. This is escalating beyond uncomfortable into potentially dangerous territory, Maxwell said seriously. "I can send cease and desist letters to your family members. We can pursue a restraining order if the harassment continues. Your grandmother anticipated that they might react badly, but this is more aggressive than even she predicted." I sat watching the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that should have been beautiful but just felt empty. "I don't want to get legal yet," I said. "I still have 2 months left of the 6-month period Iris requested. I want to see this through. I want to give them every possible chance to prove her wrong." "Sloane," Maxwell said gently, "they've already shown you who they are, multiple times. You don't owe them any more chances." He was right. I knew he was right. But some stubborn part of me, the part that had spent 23 years hoping my family would love me, wasn't ready to give up completely. 2 more months, I said. "If things get worse, I'll let you take legal action. But I need to finish what Iris started." After I hung up, I reread Iris' letter, the one that had been included with her will. "Make them prove their love first," she'd written. Well, they'd proven something. just not love. They'd proven that their care was conditional, that their family loyalty only extended to people who were useful, that they saw me as an asset to be exploited rather than a person to be valued, and I had 2 more months to see just how far they'd go. The day after Mitchell's workplace confrontation, Maxwell called me with a tone I hadn't heard from him before. It was protective, almost paternal. "I heard about what happened at your office. Sloan, I want you to know that I can put a stop to this harassment immediately. Your grandmother gave me discretion to act in your best interests, and watching them attack you like this feels like a violation of her wishes for your well-being." His concern made me feel less alone than I had in days. "I appreciate that, Maxwell, I really do. But I made a commitment to see this through Iris way. 2 more months, I can handle 2 more months." There was a pause. "Your grandmother told me you were stubborn. She meant it as a compliment. But stubbornness can become self-destruction if you're not careful." Maxwell explained that had been following the situation more closely than I realized. "I've documented everything you've told me about their harassment. If we need to pursue legal action, we have a solid case for a restraining order, possibly even a civil harassment lawsuit. Your mother's call to your employer was particularly egregious. Attempting to damage someone's professional reputation with false claims crosses several legal lines. Knowing I had that option, that there was a nuclear button I could press if things became unbearable, gave me a strange sense of calm. Thank you for protecting me," I said quietly, "even when I'm too stubborn to protect myself." Maxwell's response was warm. "Your grandmother trusted me to look after you. I don't take that responsibility lightly. You're not alone in this, Sloan. Remember that." The next ally appeared from an unexpected place. Deanna, my coworker who'd witnessed Mitchell's scene in the lobby, asked me to lunch a few days later. We went to a quiet cafe, a few blocks from the office, and she didn't waste time with small talk. "I'm going to share something personal with you, and I hope it helps. 5 years ago, I cut off my entire family. Parents, siblings, everyone. They were toxic, manipulative, and emotionally abusive. Leaving them was the hardest and best decision I ever made." I stared at her, this confident, successful woman who always seemed to have everything together. "You cut off everyone? Don't you miss them?" Deanna's smile was sad but genuine. "I miss the family I wished I had. I don't miss the family I actually had. There's a difference. I spent 28 years trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. They saw me as an extension of themselves, not as a separate person with my own needs and dreams. When I finally accepted that they'd never change, that no amount of trying on my part would make them suddenly become the parents and siblings I deserved, it was devastating, but it was also liberating." She reached across the table and took my hand. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep them warm, Sloan. And from what I witnessed in that lobby, your family expects you to burn." She told me about a support group she attended. People who'd gone no contact or low contact with family members with narcissistic personality traits, or who came from dysfunctional family systems. It changed my life to sit in a room with people who understood. People who didn't try to convince me that family is everything and I should keep trying. People who validated that my experience was real and my decision to protect myself was right. She wrote down the meeting information on a napkin and slid it across to me. "You don't have to go. But if you want to, I'll come with you. Sometimes it helps to know you're not crazy and you're not alone." I went to the meeting that Thursday evening. It was held in a community center basement, folding chairs arranged in a circle, coffee brewing in the corner. Deanna introduced me to the group leader, a therapist named Dr. Foster, who facilitated the sessions. There were 8 other people there, ranging in age from early 20s to late 50s. When it was my turn to share, I gave them the abbreviated version. The neglect growing up, the skipped graduation, the inheritance, the family's harassment when I wouldn't give them money. I expected judgment or disbelief. Instead, I got nods of recognition. A woman named Paige, probably in her 40s, spoke first. "My family did something similar. Ignored me my whole life until I got a settlement from a car accident. Then suddenly everyone needed help with bills, wanted loans for businesses, expected me to fund their lives. When I said no, I became the selfish one who'd abandoned the family. A man named Landon added, "The thing that helped me was realizing that their version of family was actually just people who give me what I want. The moment you stop being useful, you stop being family. That's not love. That's exploitation." Person after person shared stories that echoed my own. Different details, same fundamental pattern. And sitting in that circle, hearing my pain reflected back to me by strangers who understood, something inside me shifted. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't too sensitive or too selfish. I was a person who'd been systematically devalued by people who should have protected me, and I had every right to protect myself now. The fourth attack came from the person whose opinion, despite everything, still had the power to hurt me most. My father Howard called me for the first time in months. Not a text, not an email, an actual phone call. "Sloan," he said when I answered, and his voice had a softness I rarely heard. "I think we need to talk, just you and me. Can we have dinner?" Some pathetic, hopeful part of me lit up. Maybe he finally saw what they'd been doing. Maybe he finally wanted to have a real relationship. "Okay," I said carefully. "When?" We met at an expensive steakhouse downtown 2 days later. Howard was already seated when I arrived, and he stood to greet me, actually pulled out my chair. The first 20 minutes felt surreal. He asked about my job and actually listened to my answers. He asked about my apartment and seemed genuinely interested when I carefully described it as nice. Nothing fancy, but comfortable. He told me stories about his work, about a vacation he and my mother were planning, about Blair's latest drama at school. It was the most attention he'd paid me in years, possibly ever. I found myself relaxing, laughing at his jokes, feeling like maybe, just maybe, something was shifting. Then, over dessert, his tone changed. "So, you're doing well then? Financially stable?" My guard went up immediately. "Am managing fine. Why?" Howard set down his fork and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I have a proposition for you. I'll give you $30,000. You give it to Mitchell and tell him it's from you. That way, you look like the hero who came through for family, and you're back in everyone's good graces. You don't actually lose any money, but you get to repair these relationships that have been damaged." The hope that had been building for the past hour crumbled into dust. "You want to pay me to pretend I helped Mitchell? Why would you do that?" Howard's mask cracked slightly. "Because Mitchell is making me look bad at the club. People are talking. They're saying I raised a son who made foolish investments and a daughter who won't help family in crisis. It reflects poorly on me professionally and socially. If you're seen helping your brother, it solves the problem. Not I want you to have a relationship with your brother. Not I'm worried about you being isolated from the family." It was about his reputation, his standing at his country club, his professional image. "So this dinner," I said slowly, asking about my life, acting interested, "that was all manipulation? To soften me up for this proposition?" Howard actually looked offended. "I wouldn't call it manipulation. I'm offering you a solution that benefits everyone. You get your family back, Mitchell gets help, and we all move forward." I stood up from the table, my napkin falling to the floor. "I don't want your money. I don't want to lie for you. And I definitely don't want to perform happy family for your reputation." Howard's expression hardened into the coldness I recognized. "If you don't help, you're no daughter of mine. I'll cut you off completely. You'll have nothing and no one. I stopped being your daughter when you couldn't be bothered to show up to my college graduation," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "And for the record, I've never had nothing. I've had myself. I've had my own strength and determination and resilience. I built a life without your help, and I'll continue living that life without your approval." I walked out of that restaurant, leaving him sitting at the table with the check, probably fuming about the scene I'd caused. On the train home, I didn't cry. I'd cried enough over these people. Instead, I felt something else. Clarity. Cold, crystalline clarity that my father didn't love me and never would. He saw me as a problem to be managed, a chess piece to be moved, a tool to protect his reputation. That wasn't love. That was narcissism. And I was done mistaking one for the other. The 6 months that Iris had requested were almost up. I'd spent that time building a life that actually felt like mine. My career had flourished with a second promotion that put me in a senior leadership position. My friendships with Deanna, Vaughn, and Blythe had deepened into genuine chosen family. My therapy sessions with Dr. Chen had helped me process decades of pain and start building real self-worth. The support group had given me community and validation. It decorated my penthouse until it felt like home, filled with plants and books and artwork that made me happy. It learned what it felt like to be valued, to have people show up, to matter. And the contrast between this life and my previous existence was so stark it sometimes took my breath away. My family's harassment had continued but at a lower intensity after I'd made it clear I wouldn't engage. The group chats still occasionally lit up with passive-aggressive messages. Blair still posted vague social media complaints. Mitchell sent sporadic texts that ranged from guilt-tripping to threatening. My mother left voicemails that I deleted without listening to. My father maintained his promised silence. They were hovering, waiting, probably trying to figure out their next move, but they hadn't discovered the full extent of my inheritance yet. Mitchell knew I had an expensive apartment, but he didn't know about the investment portfolio, the actual value of the penthouse, or the full scope of what Iris had left me. That was about to change. The catalyst came in the form of Blair's 20th birthday party. My mother sent a group text to the family chat I was still reluctantly part of. Blair's birthday party is Saturday at the country club. Family should be there. 6 o'clock. It wasn't an invitation. It was an expectation. I wasn't officially invited. No personal message asking if I'd come. Just an assumption that I'd show up to play my role as family background decoration. For a moment, I considered not going. Why subject myself to their toxicity? But then I thought about Iris' plan. 6 months was almost up. This would be my final test before I was free to live openly. One more chance to see if any of them had changed. One more opportunity to confirm what I already knew. I arrived at the country club in a modest dress I'd owned for years. Minimal jewelry, my hair in a simple ponytail. I wanted to blend in, to be invisible one last time. The party was being held in one of the private dining rooms, decorated elaborately with flowers and balloons and a custom banner with Blair's name. There were at least 40 people there, extended family, and Blair's friends. Everyone dressed in cocktail attire and holding champagne flutes. I walked in and immediately noticed that there was no place card for me at any table. Everyone else had assigned seats with hand-calligraphed name cards. Mine was conspicuously absent. I stood awkwardly near the entrance until a server noticed my confusion and asked if I needed help. "I'm family," I said quietly, "but I don't have a seat." She looked flustered, checked her seating chart, and then asked me to wait. 5 minutes later, she returned with a folding chair that clearly didn't match the rental chairs everyone else had, placed it at the far end of one table, and gave me an apologetic smile. I sat down in my mismatched chair at the furthest possible position from where my family was seated, and not a single person acknowledged my arrival. Not my parents, not my siblings, not any of the relatives, who'd been so vocal in their condemnation of me months earlier. I was there, but I was invisible. The evening proceeded exactly as I'd expected. My father stood to give a toast, going on at length about his beautiful daughters and how proud he was of Blair's accomplishments. The photographer he'd hired panned across the room during the speech, capturing Blair's tearful smile, my mother's proud expression, Mitchell's supportive grin. The camera passed over me like I was part of the furniture. When it was time for gifts, Blair sat at a special table at the front of the room while everyone lined up to present their offerings. Designer handbags, expensive jewelry, spa packages, gift certificates to high-end stores. Mitchell and his new girlfriend Tessa gave her keys to a used BMW they'd bought together. My parents presented her with a check that I couldn't see the amount of but, based on her reaction, was substantial. It brought a gift too, something I'd spent time and thought on. A custom photo album I'd made myself, filled with pictures of Blair and me from childhood, with handwritten captions and decorations. It had taken me hours to put together, going through old photos and selecting moments that showed the relationship I'd wished we had. When my turn came, I placed it on the gift table. Blair opened it last, after all the expensive offerings had been exclaimed over and photographed for social media. She flipped through a few pages with an expression of vague confusion, then looked up at me with something like pity. "Oh, thanks, I guess," she said dismissively, and set it aside to return to admiring her BMW keys. During dessert, a family friend I vaguely recognized approached our table and struck up conversation with the people seated near me. Eventually, she turned to me with a polite smile. "And what do you do, dear?" Before I could open my mouth to respond, my mother's voice cut across from the adjacent table. "Oh, that's just Sloane, our other daughter. She works in an office somewhere, nothing special like Mitchell." The words hit like a physical blow. "Nothing special." My father added without looking up from his cake, "We're still waiting for her to make something of herself. Maybe someday." A few people laughed uncomfortably. Blair giggled behind her hand. Mitchell's new girlfriend Tessa asked loudly. "At least she finally moved out of that gross apartment, right? Though I can't imagine where she lives now is much better." Then Mitchell stood up with his champagne glass raised, and my entire body went tense. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "To Blair, the daughter who actually appreciates everything she's given, the sibling who understands what family means. Here's to another year of success and happiness for someone who deserves it." He looked directly at me during the last sentence, his meaning unmistakable. Everyone raised their glasses and cheered. Everyone except me. I sat there with my untouched champagne, feeling 30 years old instead of 23, exhausted instead of angry. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened the real estate app where my penthouse was listed, the professional photos showing every luxurious detail, the price listed at $5.2 million, my name clearly visible as the owner. I stood up slowly, walked to the center of the room where the gift table stood, and set my phone down facing my family. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The screen was large enough and bright enough that everyone nearby could see it. Then I turned and walked out of that country club with my head high and my back straight. Refusing to rush. Refusing to run. Behind me, I heard gasps, then silence, then an explosion of voices all talking at once. I didn't look back. I'd spent 23 years looking back, hoping they'd see me. I was done. My phone started ringing before I even made it to my car. I silenced it and drove home in peace, watching the city lights blur past my windows. By the time I pulled into my building's parking garage, I had 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages. I rode the elevator up to my penthouse, poured myself a glass of wine, and only then did I start reading through the chaos I'd left behind. My mother's messages came first, a rapid-fire succession that escalated from confusion to demand. "What was that? Call me right now. Sloane Marie Hartley, you answer your phone this instant. Is that real? Where did you get that kind of money? Call me now." My father's messages were shorter but more calculated. "We need to discuss your financial situation immediately. This affects the family. Call me to arrange a meeting. We have things to work out." Mitchell's texts ranged from disbelief to fury. "That can't be real. You're just trying to make yourself look good. Where the hell did you get $5 million? You've been lying to us this entire time. You let me suffer while you were sitting on this?" Blair's messages were the most predictable. "Oh my God, Sloane. I had no idea. Can I come see your place? We should totally go shopping together. I'm sorry if I haven't been the best sister. Let's hang out." The transparency was almost funny. I didn't respond to any of them. I finished my wine, took a long shower, and went to bed in my comfortable penthouse with my city views and my hard-won peace. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them show their true colors one final time. The next morning, I woke up to find that the messages had multiplied overnight. My family had clearly stayed up late researching, because the tone had shifted from confusion to barely contained rage mixed with desperate friendliness. Apparently, they'd done a deep dive into public records and discovered not just the penthouse but also Iris Will. My mother's morning message was incandescent with fury. "I just found out my own mother left you everything. That money should have been mine. I was her daughter. How dare you manipulate a dying woman? Call me immediately so we can discuss splitting this inheritance properly among the family. My father's message was more strategic. I've reviewed the asset breakdown of Iris estate. We should meet with financial advisors to discuss optimal management and distribution among family members. This is too much money for one person your age to handle responsibly. Mitchell's tone had shifted to bitter accusation. Grandma Iris always liked you best. I should have known she'd pull something like this. But keeping it secret? Letting your own brother face financial ruin when you could have helped? That's unforgivable. Blair was still trying the friendship angle but with an edge of desperation. I know we haven't always been close, but we're sisters. Family should share everything. We could be so happy together with this money. Please call me back. The extended family weighed in too. Aunt Loretta, who'd called me cold and selfish months ago, now texted that she'd always known I had potential and we should reconnect after too long apart. Cousin Simone suggested a family reunion where we could all celebrate this blessing together. What happened next would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. My workplace received 40 dozen roses. The security desk called up to ask where they should put them all because there wasn't room in the lobby. The card read, "From your loving family. We miss you. Please come home." Massive gift baskets started arriving at my apartment building, things I would never use like caviar and expensive champagne and imported chocolates, each one with a card begging me to call. My mother showed up at my office building, but security wouldn't let her up without my permission. I watched her on the security camera feed, arguing with the guard, insisting she was my mother and had a right to see me, eventually being escorted out. It was simultaneously satisfying and sad. My father apparently decided that direct appeals weren't working, so he sent his business partner to coincidentally run into me at the coffee shop I frequented before work. The man was smooth, I'd give him that. He struck up conversation naturally, mentioned he knew my father, casually brought up that Howard was so proud of my success and regretted that we'd grown distant. The manipulation was so transparent I almost admired the audacity. I politely excused myself and found a new coffee shop. Mitchell's approach was a handwritten letter delivered by courier. 5 pages of apologies and explanations and justifications. I'm sorry for everything. I was going through an incredibly difficult time and I wasn't myself. I never meant to hurt you. You're my sister and I love you. I know I haven't always shown it, but family is the most important thing in the world to me. Please give me a chance to make this right. The letter was carefully crafted, hitting every emotional beat. Probably drafted and redrafted multiple times. It might have worked if I hadn't spent 6 months in therapy learning to recognize manipulation tactics. Blair's tactic was social media rehabilitation. She started posting throwback photos of us as children, carefully selected images that made us look close. Pictures of us at Halloween, at the beach, at birthday parties. All with captions like, "Missing my sister so much," and "Throwback to simpler times," and "Family is forever." Her friends commented with hearts and crying emojis. People who didn't know our real history probably thought we were close siblings going through a temporary rough patch. The performance was impressive. Finally, a formal invitation arrived via certified mail. You are cordially invited to a family dinner at the Hartley residence to discuss recent family matters and restore communication among all family members. Your presence is respectfully and lovingly requested. It was signed by all 4 of them. My mother, my father, Mitchell, and Blair. A united front. I sat at my dining table, looking at the heavy cardstock invitation with its elegant calligraphy, and almost laughed at the absurdity. 6 months ago, they couldn't attend my college graduation. Now they were sending me formal invitations to restore communication. I called Maxwell. They found out about everything. Now they want a family meeting to discuss things. His response was immediate. You don't owe them anything, Sloan. You've completed Iris' 6-month request. You've seen exactly who they are. You can walk away now with a clear conscience. He was right, but I wanted one more thing. I wanted to look them in the eye and tell them exactly what I thought. I wanted closure. I'm going to accept their invitation, I said. But on my terms. I replied to their invitation with my own letter. I will attend one family dinner. But am setting ground rules. No manipulation tactics. No guilt trips. No demands for money. We have an honest conversation about our family history and relationship, or I walk out and you never hear from me again. My mother's response came within an hour. Of course, sweetheart. We just want to talk. We love you and we miss you. Well, do whatever you need to make you comfortable. The words were perfect, too perfect. I knew they were lying. But I was going anyway because after this, it'd be free. Completely free. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully in clothes that felt like armor. A simple but expensive dress I'd bought recently. Subtle jewelry, my hair styled professionally. I looked like someone who had her life together because I did. I arrived at my childhood home exactly on time, not early and not late, and found the entire family waiting for me like I was royalty. My mother opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a hug that felt invasive and false. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you came. We've missed you so much. My father actually stood from his chair in the living room. A show of respect had never offered before. Mitchell and Blair descended on me with smiles and hugs, telling me how good I looked. How happy they were to see me. The dining room table was set with the fancy china that only came out for important guests, candles lit, fresh flowers as a centerpiece. My mother had cooked all of what she claimed were my favorite foods, though half of them were actually Blair's favorites, and my mother had apparently never bothered to learn the difference. We sat down to dinner, and for the first hour, they were on their absolute best behavior. They asked about my job and listened to the answers. They complimented my apartment based on the photos they'd seen. They shared stories and laughed and created the illusion of a happy family dinner. My mother reminisced about supposed bonding moments from my childhood. Remember when we used to bake cookies together every Sunday? Those were such special times. We had never baked together. Not once. That was something she'd done with Blair. My father chimed in with, I've always been so proud of you, Sloane. Even when I didn't say it enough. I was always proud. Head literally called me a disappointment 6 months ago. Mitchell tried to connect over shared childhood memories, most of which Head invented or stolen from his own experiences. Blair kept touching my arm and calling me her favorite sister like she hadn't publicly humiliated me at her birthday party. The facade was exhausting to watch. I ate my dinner and waited for the real agenda to show itself. After dessert, my father cleared his throat. Now that we're all together, I think we should talk about the elephant in the room. Iris' inheritance was substantial, and it affects the whole family. There it was. My mother jumped in immediately. We're not angry that she left you the money, sweetheart. We understand that you and Iris were close, but that money represents our family's legacy. Iris would want it to benefit all of us, not just one person. Mitchell leaned forward with practiced sincerity. With your resources and my business experience, we could make real money. I have investment opportunities that could double what you have. We'd be partners. Family working together. Blair's contribution was more direct. Plus you have all that space. I could totally move in with you. We'd be like roommates. It would be so fun. And I could help you decorate and make it more homey. My father pulled out actual documents. I've had my financial advisor draw up a proposal for how we could structure a family trust. Everyone contributes their assets, and we all benefit from the managed growth. It's what Iris would have wanted. Every single I love you had been preamble. Every hug, every compliment, every reminiscence had been manipulation to soften me up for this pitch. I reached into my bag and pulled out printed copies of texts, emails, and transcripts of voicemails from the past 6 months. I placed them on the table one by one like evidence in a trial. Mitchell threatening me at my workplace, mother lying to my employer about borrowed money, father's ultimatum at dinner, Blair's public smear campaign, extended family messages calling me selfish and cold. Screenshots of social media posts designed to humiliate me. I looked at each of them in turn. This is who you are. This is how you've always treated me. The only difference now is that I have something you want. My mother's mask cracked first. How dare you? We were trying to help you, trying to include you, and you saved all of this like you were building some kind of case against us. I kept my voice level. I saved it because I knew we'd end up here. With you pretending the past never happened and trying to manipulate me into giving you access to money you think you're entitled to. Iris' letter included specific instructions, I continued. She asked me to wait 6 months before telling you about the inheritance. 6 months to see if you would love me when you thought I had nothing. Do you know what happened during those 6 months? You skipped my college graduation. You demanded I go into debt to fix Mitchell's problems. You launched a campaign to destroy my reputation. You showed up at my workplace. You called my employer with lies. You hired a private investigator to follow me. You did everything except love me. My mother's face went red. You're being ungrateful! After everything we've done for you, we raised you, fed you, clothed you. I leaned forward. Name one thing. One single thing you've done for me that you didn't weaponize later. One time you helped me without expecting something in return or holding it over my head. One achievement of mine you celebrated as enthusiastically as you celebrated Mitchell's and Blair's mediocrity. The silence was deafening. Nobody could answer because there was no answer. My father tried a different approach. That money is family money. Your grandmother was my mother-in-law. She accumulated that wealth as part of our family. Morally, it should be shared among all her descendants. I looked at him with something close to pity. Iris left that money to me specifically because she knew what you were. She watched you treat Mom the same way Mom treated me, and she wanted to break the cycle. She chose me not in spite of you, but because of you. Mitchell's bitterness erupted. So you're just going to keep it all? That's incredibly selfish. You're going to sit in your fancy penthouse alone while your own brother struggles? I laughed, and it came out harder than I intended. You mean the brother who didn't show up to my graduation because of a client meeting? The brother who demanded $30,000 from me and called me pathetic when I said no? That brother? Blair started crying, her go-to manipulation tactic. I thought we were close. I thought you loved me. I looked at my younger sister. You posted Instagram stories from Paris during my graduation ceremony. You didn't even send a congratulations text. When was the last time you asked how I was doing? Actually asked, and listened to the answer? My mother tried one last manipulation. If you walk away from this family, you'll regret it. Family is all you have in this world. You'll end up alone with your money and realize too late that you destroyed the relationships that actually mattered. I stood up from the table. No, family is supposed to be people who show up, who celebrate your wins and support you through struggles, who love you at your lowest, not just when you can give them something. I have family now, friends who came to my graduation, co-workers who defend me, a therapist who teaches me my worth, a support group that validates my experience, people who choose to be in my life, not people who feel entitled to my resources. You're not my family, I said clearly. You're just people I'm related to. There's a difference. My father blocked the door. If you walk out now, you're dead to us. Cut off. Completely. Well, tell everyone what you've done. You'll have nothing. I smiled, and I meant it. I've been dead to you my whole life, Dad. Now I'm finally free. I walked past him, and he actually stepped aside. Mitchell shouted after me, "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back." I reached the front door and turned back one last time. My mother was crying angry tears. My father looked murderous. Mitchell was red-faced with fury. Blair looked confused, like she genuinely couldn't understand why her manipulation hadn't worked. "For what it's worth," I said quietly, "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I spent 23 years trying to earn love that was never mine to earn. I'm done. I hope someday you figure out what you lost. But I'm not waiting around to find out." I walked out of that house for the last time. I got in my car and drove back to my penthouse. And I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad or guilty or regretful. I felt light, unburdened, free. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. My career had continued to flourish. It'd been promoted again and was now leading major national campaigns. The work was challenging and fulfilling in ways I'd never imagined. Deanna, Vaughn, Blythe, and I had grown even closer, spending holidays together, celebrating each other's milestones, creating the kind of chosen family I'd never known existed. I'd started a charity in Iris' name that provided scholarships specifically for middle children from dysfunctional families, kids who were overlooked and undervalued but still fighting to build better lives. The first year, we gave out 10 scholarships. Watching those kids' faces when they found out they'd been chosen, that someone saw them and believed in them, healed something deep in my soul. My family tried to contact me a few more times in those first months. My mother sent emails that ranged from apologetic to threatening. My father had his lawyer send a letter suggesting I was legally obligated to share the inheritance, which my lawyer quickly shut down. Mitchell oscillated between asking for forgiveness and posting vague social media complaints about family betrayal. Blair tried the hardest, sending gifts and letters and even showing up at my office building once, but it instructed security not to let any family members up. Eventually they stopped trying. I heard through distant relatives that they'd crafted a narrative where I was the villain, the ungrateful daughter who'd stolen from the family and cut everyone off. I didn't bother correcting the story. People who knew me knew the truth. People who didn't weren't my problem. I went back to therapy regularly, processing the grief of losing the family I'd wished for while celebrating the freedom of releasing the family I actually had. Dr. Chen helped me understand that I could mourn the relationship I deserved while also acknowledging that my family wasn't capable of providing it. You can miss what you needed from them without missing them, she told me. Those are two different things. The support group remained a constant source of strength. Hearing others' stories, sharing my own, realizing over and over that I wasn't alone, or crazy or wrong, that made all the difference. I decorated my penthouse exactly how I wanted it. Art from local galleries that spoke to me. A reading nook by the window with shelves full of books, plants everywhere. A spare bedroom set up as a guest room for when friends visited. Photos on the mantle. But now, they were photos of people who actually showed up. Deanna and me at a concert. Vaughn and Blythe and I at Halloween. My support group at a holiday party. The scholarship recipients at our awards ceremony, and in the center, in a beautiful silver frame, a photo of Iris and me from 2 years before she died, both of us smiling at the camera, both of us genuinely happy. One evening, I hosted a dinner party in my penthouse. 10 people gathered around my dining table, friends and colleagues and chosen family, laughing and talking, and enjoying food I'd learned to cook. Deanna raised her glass for a toast. To Sloan, who taught me that walking away from toxicity isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. Thank you for being brave enough to choose yourself. Everyone raised their glasses and I felt tears in my eyes. But they were good tears. Happy tears. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The lonely graduation. The secret inheritance. The 6 months of watching my family reveal themselves. The attacks and manipulations and final confrontation, the grief and healing and growth, standing in my beautiful home surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I realized something profound. I'd spent 23 years trying to earn love that was never mine to earn. Some people will only value you when you have something they want. The best revenge isn't showing them what they lost. It's building a life so full of genuine love that their absence doesn't even register anymore. Iris gave me more than money. She gave me permission to choose myself. She gave me the resources to build the life I deserved. She gave me proof that at least one person in my family saw me, valued me, loved me exactly as I was. That was worth more than $5 million. That was priceless. I raised my glass to Iris' photo on the mantle. To the people who show up, I said softly. Everyone around the table echoed the toast. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights sparkled against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, my family was probably still bitter, still telling stories about my betrayal, still not understanding what they'd lost. But here, in my home, surrounded by love, I'd chosen and earned and built, I was finally, completely, undeniably happy. I was free, and that freedom, that peace, that joy, that was my real inheritance. That was what Iris had really given me, not just money, but permission to love myself enough to walk away from people who didn't, and I'd never ever regret it. Have you ever been the overlooked child in your family? Have you had to walk away from toxic family members to save yourself? Drop a comment below and share your story, because I know so many of you understand exactly what this feels like. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button so I know it mattered to you. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about people who chose themselves and built better lives. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to protect yourself, even from family. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and for being part of this community. Remember, you deserve people who show up. You deserve to be someone's first choice, not their last resort. And if the people in your life can't give you that, it's okay to build a new family from people who will. I'm sending love and strength to everyone out there who's fighting this same battle. You're not alone. You're not wrong. And you're worth so much more than they made you believe. Take care of yourselves, choose yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.